Now we move on to the second one of the 5 circumstantial advantages. A Buddha has preached the Dharma. Imagine a Buddha had come but remained in meditation without teaching the Dharma. Then, despite his presence in this world, the light of his teachings had not appeared. As a result, beings would still not know what to do and what not to do. It would be just as if the Buddha had never come at all. Some Buddhas appear in the world, but because beings of that time don't have enough merit, those Buddhas remain in a long meditative state or choose not to teach. Under such a scenario, beings could not directly receive real benefits. For example, our fundamental teacher, Buddha Shakyamuni, accumulated vast merit and wisdom during 3 countless great kalpas in his causal stage, and in the end he engaged in 6 years of ascetic practice by the Naranja River and finally attained completely perfect enlightenment upon the Vajra seat. However, after attaining Buddhahood, the Buddha exclaimed, "I have found a Dharma like ambrosia, deep, peaceful, simple, uncompounded, radiant. If I explain it, no one will understand, so I shall stay here silent in the forest." The state of the Buddha's enlightenment has 5 characteristics. 1, deep, the essence is formlessness. 2, peaceful, the nature is devoid of thought. 3, simple, non-conceptual, free of any eternalist views. 4, uncompounded, free of any extreme of existence and non-existence. 5, radiant, free of any nihilist views. The Buddha attained the ambrosia-like state with these 5 characteristics that can cure the 84,000 afflictions. However, the state seemed too profound to be understood by any being, so the Buddha abode silently in the forest at Bodh Gaya. Accordingly, for 49 days he did not teach. Nagarjuna says in the Precious Garland, "Because the Dharma is so profound that it is hard for beings to understand, so after the Buddha attained enlightenment, he remained silent and taught no Dharma." If we had happened to be born in the period when the Buddha appeared but didn't teach the Dharma, even if we had the advantage of support, the human form, would the Dharma have been of benefit to us? The answer is no. Later, because of their supreme aspirations in the previous lives, Brahma and Indra beseeched the Buddha to turn the wheel of the Dharma. Brahma offered the Buddha a 1,000-spoked golden wheel, and Indra offered turquoise, mandala, and a white right-turning conch shell. The Buddha then started to give teachings to his first 5 disciples and to beings who had an affinity with him. The Buddha turned the wheel of the Dharma 3 times in Sarnath, the deer park, Gadrakuta, the vulture peak, and Vaishali respectively. Therefore, we should know that even though the Buddha had come, if he had not taught the Dharma, beings wouldn't have received the benefits of the Dharma. In our daily chanting prayer, one verse goes like this: "To the unsurpassable protector, the precious authentic Dharma." What is the precious authentic Dharma? It is the Dharma that saves and protects all beings. To benefit all beings, we shall cultivate Dharma wisdom so that we can dispel the darkness of ignorance and expel the afflictions of ourselves and others. To cultivate Dharma wisdom, we must practice the Dharma from now on. Of course, practicing the Dharma shouldn't be as some Dharma centers promote, going directly to the highest teachings without any ngondro practice. The highest teachings include tantric practices such as trekcho, thoroughly cutting through, and togol, direct crossing, which are the pinnacle of all paths. However, until you are fully capable, no matter how high the teaching is, it won't be of great benefit to you. Therefore, we should contemplate, again and again, each instruction in the words of my perfect teacher. For example, the teaching, although the Buddha has appeared, if he doesn't preach the Dharma, his appearance would make no difference to us, may seem simple on the surface, but it is not easy at all to truly generate conviction about its meaning. When we have a deep understanding about the teaching, gradually our mind gets tamed and pacified. This is like planting crops in spring. Only when the land is well plowed the seeds of barley or wheat can sprout and grow in a timely manner. If, on the other hand, the land is not leveled, plowed, and watered, even if you plant the best seeds, hardly any sprouts will emerge. It is the same with our Dharma practice. We have to first plow the land of our minds, putting the basic teachings into practice again and again until we have the feeling. Regarding the higher level of practices, such as perceptionless absorption, the inner yoga of channels, energies, and essences, the visualization of the subtle channels, as we are not yet ready, we can put them aside for now. Then what should we practice now? The answer is the very basic teaching on the difficulty of finding the freedoms and advantages. We should truly feel this way. Impermanence may arrive at any moment, and my human life is so rare and precious, therefore I must practice the Dharma. You can't simply talk the talk here. Your conviction should arise from the depths of your mind at any time. Only by doing so can you have a successful practice in this life. The White Lotus of Compassion Sutra says, "Being born as a human is very rare. Living in the time when the Buddha has appeared is very rare. Going after the virtuous Dharma with bliss and generating virtuous aspirations are also very rare." I really like this verse. We must all remember this. The four occurrences, being born as a human, living in the time when the Buddha has appeared, going after the Dharma with bliss, and generating virtuous aspirations, are very rare and precious. Everyone can pay lip service, but it's worth checking whether we indeed feel this in our heart. How incredibly rare is it that we can be reborn in the bright kalpa in which a Buddha has appeared, after we have experienced so many dark kalpas. Even if the Buddha has appeared in this bright kalpa, the duration of his teachings in this world is very brief. Thus, it is even much rarer that we were born at the right time when the Dharma still exists in this kalpa. If we think this way, it means we're starting to understand the Ngondro teachings well. If a Buddha doesn't teach, the Dharma cannot bring any direct and real benefit to beings. This also applies to eminent masters. If those holders of authentic teachings do not teach, it is difficult for the Dharma to be of any true benefit to beings. Therefore, to help and benefit beings, someone must give the teachings. Many Tibetan and Han Chinese Dharma masters, who lived in the same period as the great Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche, achieved high levels of realization. However, for some reason, some of them neither taught on a large scale nor took many disciples. The presence of such great enlightened masters in this world, even just for one day, can bring everyone peace, happiness, and great benefits. But if we observe whether they have directly benefited others, we may find out that some close followers of those masters don't seem to fully understand the master's states of realization, and they seem not to have achieved realization yet. Therefore, if eminent masters don't benefit beings through the teachings of the Dharma to all the sentient beings, it is no different from the Buddha not expounding the Dharma. Nowadays, the Dharma still exists, but without a qualified teacher giving teachings and guiding us, we may not understand the meaning of the Dharma. It's like the Minister of Education allowing schools to be established in many rural places, but if there are no teachers, even if village children attend the school, they will remain illiterate. Why? Because without a teacher teaching, it is impossible for the children to learn by themselves. Even when we are learning how to drive or draw, without guidance from a teacher, we hardly know what to do properly, not to mention learning the profound Dharma. Therefore, temples and Buddhist centers should invite competent teachers with strong altruistic intentions to give teachings. Without such teachers, these places can only bring slight benefit to beings. An example is about the great Indian Pandita Smritinana. Through his clairvoyance, Smritinana knew that his deceased mother had been reborn as a frog trapped in the stovestone of a Tibetan household and was undergoing excruciating suffering. Beings in the ephemeral hells, including his mother, experience different kinds of suffering due to the differences in their own karmas. For example, many such beings are reborn in the rocks of a cliff or in the sea. To guide his mother from the ephemeral hells, despite his old age and the need for an interpreter, Smritinana embarked on the arduous journey from India to Tibet. Besides his interpreter, Smritinana was also accompanied by another Pandita. When crossing the border between Nepal and Tibet, Smritinana's interpreter unfortunately died of a sudden illness. Some said it was diarrhea. Both Panditas were Indian and didn't know Tibetan. The other Pandita chose to practice Drongjug, transferring his consciousness into another body, and was reborn as Rongzom Choki Zangpan 12, 2088. Smritinanathan wandered around calm until he finally found the Tibetan household with the stove stone. Because of the language barrier, no one knew Smritinana was the most learned Pandita in India, so he had to work as a servant for the Tibetan family. An old woman in that house made him herd sheep every day and do the hardest chores. Sometimes, the old woman even sat on him instead of a cushion to milk the cows. Smritinana lived in this situation for a long time. The old woman believed in Buddhism and often traveled looking for teachers. Smritinana wrote down a few poems in her house, one of which went something like this. The bright moon is in a person's house, but that person is not aware of it. Instead, he is looking for a water moon elsewhere. This meant that Smritinana, a great Indian Pandita who was like the bright moon, happened to be in her house, but she didn't know. Instead, she was busy searching for so-so teachers who were like a water moon. There are two accounts regarding what happened to Smritinana later. One, the first, is that he endured great hardship and eventually guided his mother safely to a pure realm. When he was about to leave the Tibetan family, through his clairvoyance, he knew that a nearby mountain would fall down. So he alerted the old woman and her neighbors with his broken Tibetan, asking them to flee as soon as possible. The old woman, who had long ago noticed Smritinana's exceptional manners and knew he was not just an ordinary vagabond, followed his advice. She took all her belongings on the back of a yak and left the village with Smritinana. Other villagers didn't believe him, saying, "How can a mountain that high collapse to the ground? That person can barely speak Tibetan. He must be talking nonsense." However, on the next day, a large landslide happened just as Smritinana had predicted, and the whole village was buried. It is said that this incident occurred somewhere called Red Earth, Tib Sadmar, near Sershal in the eastern Tibetan region. The crack where the mountain collapsed is still visible today. 2. The second account is that Cheljung Gyeltsen, a disciple of Smritinana, learned of his whereabouts and invited him to teach in a monastery. After offering this small-scale teaching, Smritinana passed into parinirvana. Smritinana was born around the junction of the periods of the earlier dissemination, Tib Sangadar, and the later dissemination, Tib Fayadar, and was a renowned Pandita. He was not only Atisha's teacher, but according to historical accounts, he was also the teacher of King Jasar. Smritinana also taught the treasury of Abhidharma in Tibet. After his Tibetan became fluent, he also composed a text on grammar titled Weapon-like Introduction to Speech. It is said that some of the scriptures he copied are still present today in the region. Even though Smritinana was such a highly realized master, without him giving teachings, even the family he stayed with every day received little benefit, let alone all of Tibet. It was also said that when he was about to leave, the family wanted to pay him a wage for his service, but he asked for nothing but the stove stone. The family must have been overjoyed since his payment was just a piece of stone. Smritinana took the stone to a place where he washed it, made a lamp offering, and chanted prayers. In the end, not only his mother, who was reborn as a frog, but also many other bugs tormenting the frog were transferred to a pure realm. He accomplished the mission of coming to Tibet to save his mother, but other than this, he didn't benefit beings on a larger scale. When Jowo Atisha later arrived in Tibet, he visited that same Tibetan household and noticed the poems in Sanskrit written in a similar style to those of his teacher, Smriti Janana. Therefore, Atisha inquired around and learned that indeed his teacher had been there as a labor herding sheep every day and hadn't been able to propagate the Dharma. Upon hearing what had happened, Atisha exclaimed with sadness, "How sad! Tibetans, your merit is weak. There was no Pandita in India, be it from east or west, better than Smritinana." With his hands joined together, Atisha shed tears. Such a great Pandita was sat upon like a cushion for milking cows. No wonder, Atisha cried. It is said that when Atisha was about to pass into parinirvana, he exclaimed, "Your merit is weak, Tibetans. If I were to die here, the land of Tibet may not be able to handle it. Therefore, I'd better return to India." His disciples told him, Tibet should be able to handle, for example, the fact that the great Shantarakshita passed away in Tibet. Atisha replied, "Shantarakshita upheld pure precepts, but his wisdom was inferior to mine. Therefore, he is not equivalent to me." Other disciples added, "It should be fine for you to pass away in Tibet. The incomparable Padmasambhava also manifested his disappearance in Tibet and went to the land of Odhyana." Atisha shook his head and said, "Padmasambhava had incredible achievements, but he didn't surpass me in wisdom. No, I still don't want to die in Tibet." Then some disciples said, "It should be fine. The great Pandita Smriti Nana passed away in Tibet." Hearing this, Atisha pondered for a moment and said, "Yes, Smriti Nana was indeed a great master. In that case, I will then die in Tibet." In fact, without the help of an interpreter, the language barrier can be quite challenging. Once a lay practitioner told me, "My guru is very kind. I am so touched whenever he smiles, but when he talks, I have no idea what he is saying." So even if a master is very kind, sometimes it is hard for him to communicate with disciples. When the great Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche first took on and taught Han Chinese monastics at Larungar, there was no simultaneous interpretation for his teachings. Occasionally, when the great Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche made a joke in class, Tibetan monastics laughed aloud, while Han Chinese monastics just looked around and had no idea why people were laughing. It wasn't until the next day, when I translated the teaching into Chinese, that they understood the laughter, but the joke didn't seem too funny anymore. That's why translators are considered the eyes of the world. Without translators and teachers, even though the Dharma is supreme and the teacher's secret meaning and wisdom are profound, it is almost impossible for beings of the degenerate age to become learned on their own. Without giving teachings, even though they are eminent masters, it is very difficult for them to benefit beings. Khenpo Lekshe is a great practitioner in his 80s from my home monastery, Domeng Monastery. He traveled afar to follow many teachers when he was young. He is quite proficient in the Dharma, but sadly, people in the monastery don't pay special attention to him. Last year, I asked several monastics to listen to Khenpo Lekshe's teaching on a brief ngondro instruction of the Palyul lineage. Because there are very few holders of this Palyul instruction, in order to uphold the lineage, I actually required the monastics to attend the 1-month teaching. Khenpo Lekshe is so old that he could hardly see the text, so I asked someone to print out the text in a bigger font size. Khenpo Lekshe read the text over and immediately started to teach with great certainty. During the teaching, he spontaneously quoted scriptural evidence. I listened to the audio tape later and was amazed. It is such a pity that such a great master was unknown for so long. After he finished the teaching, he sent me a message saying, "Thank you very much for offering me such a great opportunity to teach the Dharma. I would have liked to have given the foundational teachings, such as the words of my perfect teacher or the way of the Bodhisattva, but I couldn't find anyone to listen to me. Sometimes I noticed the young monks in the monastery didn't behave properly, so I thought it might be of help to give them some instructions. However, they didn't want to listen. I also told some Sangha members, although I cannot teach you anything very profound, I can give you teachings related to Dharma practice and bodhicitta if you are interested, as I have been practicing these for my whole life, and I do have some experience. But those young monks were not interested. Hearing this, I felt a bit emotional. There may still be many such great senior practitioners in this world whose minds are filled with compassion and loving kindness, and who have attained high levels of realization. Sadly, many people don't appreciate them. What do these people go after? They seek those eloquent teachers who, however, offer nothing substantial and have no states of realization. Ironically, such teachers often attract as many disciples as a large school of fish, whereas great practitioners with true realization have only very few followers asking for teachings. If no one asks for teaching, their inner realization will remain unrevealed, as those eminent practitioners simply appear as ordinary people. Ordinary people at the age of 70 or 80 may have forgotten many doctrines they learned in the past. In comparison, some senior practitioners are truly amazing. The great Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche, for example, could constantly quote a great number of scriptural evidences and speak eloquently and fluently while teaching in his 70s, the later stage of his life. Some non-Buddhist civil servants heard the great Phuntsok Rinpoche's teaching and were in great awe, saying it is marvelous that the great Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche can memorize all these many verses by heart. In contrast to those great practitioners of the last generation, we are doing worse. Every day we see too much, hear too much, and think too much. Very often we don't concentrate on studying the Dharma, but instead we waste time on meaningless trivialities. As a result, our minds are cluttered with a mess of things, including pop songs that are often on the tip of our tongues, while the profound meaning of the Dharma can hardly appear in our mind. Therefore, it is very important to meet a true Dharma master. If there is only the Dharma but no teacher to explain it, our practice cannot embark on the right path. Of course, if language is an issue, then translators are needed. I usually like to translate Dharma texts. Some people say I've translated too much, but I ponder on this, and here is my thought. During this degenerate age, if the translation of a good Dharma text can benefit beings of later generations, even just a little bit, I am willing to work as much as possible. My translation is driven by a quite pure aspiration, so no matter what others say, I will try my very best to translate as much as possible. My life is not in vain if I can contribute more to the Dharma in my short lifespan. Thus, it is very important that a Buddha has preached the Dharma. For us, Buddha Shakyamuni has turned the wheel of the Dharma 3 times and manifested inconceivable forms according to the needs and capacities of those in need. He has led disciples through the 9 vehicles of his teachings to maturity and liberation. Now, not only the Buddha, but also qualified teachers have taught, so we all have the second advantage of the teaching of the Dharma. For this, we should feel joyful. His teachings still exist. Even if a Buddha has appeared and imparted teachings in a specific kalpa, once the time for those teachings to last has ended and the authentic Dharma he has taught disappears, it is just like a dark kalpa. The period between the disappearance of one Buddha's teachings and the next Buddha's teachings being imparted is referred to as an era of devoid of Dharma. For example, the teachings of Buddha Shakyamuni will vanish in a few thousand years, and before Buddha Maitreya comes to this world, there will be an extremely long period of devoid of Dharma. Beings who are born in a bright kalpa but happen to be in the period devoid of Dharma receive no benefit from the Dharma. We must contemplate again and again that it is very difficult to have a human form in this life. When seeing big crowds in the street and knowing that most of them don't necessarily engage in positive actions will truly generate great compassion toward them. Now we have such a great opportunity to study the doctrines. The Dharma door has always been wide open for all, and those with affinity can enter at any time. If we don't study well and miss the opportunity, we may not have it again in the future. As you should know, during the period of devoid of Dharma, except in fortunate places with adequate merit where Pratyeka Buddhas may occasionally appear, there is essentially no teaching and practice of the Dharma. Nagarjuna says in the Mula Madhyamakarika, the root stanzas of the Middle Way, when the perfect Buddhas do not manifest, and even when the Shravakas have disappeared, the primal wisdom of Pratyeka Buddhas, though there be no teacher, manifests completely. Without following qualified teachers, Pratyeka Buddhas rely on the merits accumulated through practicing the 12 links of dependent origination in previous lives and attain fruition in one session of meditation. Then, by manifesting supernatural deeds such as emitting fire and radiance from their bodies, they benefit a small group of beings who have an affinity with them. If we are born in a period of devoid of Dharma, with only Pratyeka Buddhas, will we be the fortunate ones liberated by them? Given the size of the group who may have this affinity, it is really hard to say. The Dharma doesn't exist for too long. If we are born in the period of devoid of Dharma, in a good kalpa, or in one of the many dark kalpas, we can't even hear the name of the three jewels. After careful contemplation, each of us should generate this conviction. It is so precious to have this opportunity in this life, so I must practice the Dharma. This conviction itself is a state of practice. For example, some of you practice Tummo, a meditation practice for yogic heat, and notice your navel area is getting hot. I don't think such a state of practice is necessarily important, though. You may experience signs during the practice, such as feeling hot or cold, or having steam or light above the head, but all these are nothing to celebrate about because a light bulb can also glow and a mirage in summer can also steam, so these are not signs of achievement. Nowadays, some practitioners are particularly confused. They insist on attaining an external sign, which they think proves their achievement. As for generating conviction about the difficulty of finding the freedoms and advantages, they don't think it is a supreme state of practice at all. Therefore, I'll urge them to change their mindset and recognize that real practice is to gain conviction from ngondro practices. This is very important. How long does the Dharma survive? The Moon Treasure Sutra says the teachings last 2,500 years. The Fortunate Aeon Sutra says 1,500 years, of which the age of the right Dharma lasts for 500 years, and the age of the semblance Dharma, 1,000 years. Some Han Chinese Dharma masters believe the age of the right Dharma lasts for 1,000 years, semblance Dharma 1,000 years, and the degenerate age 10,000 years. Traditions in Tibetan Buddhism, including Phugpa, Sakya, and Gelugpa, hold different opinions, but the viewpoint of the Phugpa tradition is well accepted in the Tibetan region. Despite the various opinions, the commonly accepted opinion is that of the treasury of Abhidharma, which is that the teachings of the Buddha Shakyamuni last for 5,000 years. According to the calculations of the World Buddhist Federation, this year, 2010, is the Buddhist calendar year 2553. This is based on the Theravada Buddhist calendar, which is consistent with that in the treasury of Abhidharma. The teachings of Buddha Shakyamuni are also called the teachings of the heart of Samantabhadra. Why is this? It is because inside the alms bowl that Vairocana, the Sambhogakaya of Buddha Samantabhadra, holds in his hands are 25 lotus flowers tiered one above the other, the 13th, counting from below, of which is called the Saha world, where Buddha Shakyamuni has manifested. The Saha world is exactly at the level of Vairocana's heart, so the teachings of Buddha Shakyamuni also got the corresponding name related to Samantabhadra. According to Tibetan Buddhism, the teachings of the heart of Samantabhadra also last for 5,000 years. Specifically, it goes through the following sequence. First, the fruit stage, which lasts 1,500 years. During the first 500 years, the attainment of arhathood was most prevalent. During the second 500 years, the attainment of the stage of anagamin, non-returning, was most prevalent. During the third 500 years, the attainment of the stage of sotapanna, stream enterer, was most prevalent. Second, the accomplishment stage, which lasts 1,500 years. During the first 500 years, most practitioners take the training on higher virtue. During the second 500 years, most practitioners take the training on higher mind. During the third 500 years, most practitioners take the training on higher wisdom. Third, the transmission period, which lasts 1,500 years. During the first 500 years, most practitioners study the sutra. During the second 500 years, most practitioners study the Vinaya. During the third 500 years, most practitioners study the Abhidhamma. Fourth, the symbol stage, which lasts 500 years. During this period, monastics only retain the look of monastics, and no one upholds pure precepts and practices the Dharma. There are no longer the teachings and realization of the Dharma. At the very end, even the appearance of a monastic cannot be sustained. Because being's merits are exhausted, when a monastic shaves their head, the razor doesn't work. When someone dyes kasayas or monastic robes, the pigment cannot color the robes as saffron or burgundy red. Some Dharma masters think the present is the period with only the symbols left, which is not reasonable. According to our analysis, the opinion in the Abhidharma Kosha makes sense. At the very beginning of the fruit, which is when the Buddha was alive and shortly after his parinirvana, there was a great number of Buddhists who attained fruition. As those who have read the Sutra of 100 Actions and the Sutra of the Wise and the Fool already know, people at that time swiftly attained one of the 4 stages of enlightenment after listening to teachings. Recently, a Dharma student asked me, how admirable is it that people at that time attained enlightenment so fast? Will you teach me the 4 noble truths so that I can attain arhathood very soon too? I answered, it is definitely not possible now, because we are not in the fruit period. After the time of fruit that lasts for 1,500 years, comes the time of accomplishment, when the threefold training is the primary practice. During this period in history, there were many great enlightened masters in the Chan school and the Pure Land school of Chinese Buddhism. There were also many enlightened practitioners of various lineages of Tibetan Buddhism who attained the rainbow body or went to the Buddha fields. Now we are approaching the time of symbols, so there are far fewer practitioners who attain enlightenment. Although the time of symbols has not yet arrived, after all, the Dharma still exists, people can still study and uphold the Tripitaka and generate compassion and bodhicitta. We are doing much worse compared to practitioners during the Buddha's time. Altogether, the teachings of Buddha Shakyamuni last for 5,000 years. According to the Phugpa calendar, over 3,500 years have passed, and we are approaching the 4,000th year. That means we are currently in the time of transmission. In another 500 years, Buddhism will not be anything like what it is today. During the endless cycles of samsara, it is so rare and precious that we encounter the Dharma in this life. Although we currently live in an age of 5 degenerations, the transmission and realization of the Dharma still exist. Thus, we still possess the advantage of having the Dharma in its entirety. What are the 5 degenerations? 1. The degeneration of time. This refers to the time of bad fortune when disasters occur very often. Take the economic situation, for example. World economic crises and financial storms alternate constantly. People's wealth is as unstable as water bubbles. Once can be billionaire today and penniless tomorrow. 2. The degeneration of beings. This refers to the fact that beings have inferior mental and physical states, less merit and happiness, and more suffering. Before and during the Buddha's time, humans had supreme height and strength, which has since deteriorated year by year. Some Dharma students used to spend the whole winter at Laronggar without having any problems. Now they can hardly walk a few steps without getting heavily winded. When winter comes, they cannot wait to leave Laronggar because of its lack of oxygen due to high altitude. This also shows that the degeneration is intensifying. 3. The degeneration of lifespan. This refers to the fact that beings' lifespan is getting shortened due to their negative karmas. During the Buddha's time, it was common for humans to live up to 100 years old. In comparison, now if someone becomes a centenarian, many journalists will take photos or videos of this person, regarding him or her as exceptional. Nowadays, when people reach their 50s or 60s, they think it might be time to die soon, so they want to get things arranged. Humans used to live up to 20,000 to 80,000 years in other periods of this great kalpa, but unfortunately, we are now experiencing the degeneration of lifespan. 4. The degeneration of beliefs. Monastics are gradually deteriorating, and their wrong views are proliferating. In the past, monastics conscientiously upheld the precepts and were always engaged in the threefold training of ethical conduct, concentration, and wisdom. Today's situation is as the Buddha prophesied in the Sutra of Resolving Doubts during the age of the semblance Dharma. 1,000 years after my parinirvana, the unwholesome Dharma will start to expand. The sutra also lists the following occurrences during this period. Some monastics who are non-meditators boast they've mastered meditation. Some monastics who do not grasp the true meaning of the Dharma teach the 12 divisions of sutra arbitrarily and even think they teach well. Some monastics who practice no virtue pursue wealth and do business every day, which causes worldly people to hold the 3 jewels in contempt. All these belong to the degeneration of beliefs. 5. The degeneration of disturbing emotions. This refers to fewer householders practicing the Dharma and householders practicing less of the Dharma. Of course, there are other ways to explain the degeneration of beliefs and degeneration of disturbing emotions, but here I distinguish between the monastic and the householder and offer explanations accordingly. Although the 5 degenerations are rampant nowadays, the doctrine of transmission and realization does still exist, so we must practice the Dharma while we still can. In fact, we can all practice the Dharma as we wish, provided we manage our time well. Today around noon, a 79-year-old Tibetan Lama visited me. He used to be a worldly friend of my father's and took his ordination later. He told me what he had practiced in the past 20 years and said, "Up to yesterday, I've recited the mantra of Avalokiteshvara 300 million times." He made a vow in front of me today, saying he will recite the mantra another 100 million times. I asked how long it took him to finish the 300 million recitations. 17 years, he replied. Sometimes I recited more, like 100,000 times a day. Sometimes I recited less, like when I was on a pilgrimage to Lhasa and other places I did less. I rarely socialize. I also recited 10,000 times of the prayer of good actions. This Lama used to be quite notorious in my hometown Luhuo County. My father often told me how he scuffled, killed yaks, and so I remembered him. He also admitted that when he was young, he didn't believe in the law of karma, so he committed a lot of wrongdoings. 20 years ago, he encountered a guru, and later he met the great Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche, who asked him to repent wholeheartedly by chanting the mantra of Avalokiteshvara. Now he had finished chanting the mantra 300 million times, and today he vowed to accomplish another 100 million times. I do feel that people differ in mental strength. When a person has great mental strength, even if he has committed many wrongdoings, it is never too late for him to practice diligently from now on. All in all, I hope that through the above analysis, you truly realize that it is very rare for a Buddha to teach, and it is even rarer for the Dharma to remain extant. Now that we have all the advantages, what a great blessing. Sometimes when people experience unpleasant things in life, such as the intended grocery item being sold out, running out of gas while cooking, having nowhere to purchase a needed product, or encountering family incidents, they feel they are in great trouble. In fact, it is not worth making a big fuss about such things. The real great trouble is the disappearance of the Dharma. When this happens, the whole world will be in great darkness, and our rebirth as a human will no longer be meaningful. This hasn't happened yet, so we still have the light of the Dharma. The key is whether we accept the Buddha's teachings. For the rest of our lives, if we not only listen and contemplate, but also meditate on the Dharma, our human life is indeed very valuable.